So, Yasmine,
Hi, Ken.
I'm really looking forward to our interview with Kyle today.
I am as well. Kyle K has been a good friend for many years, and I've learned a lot about food from him. He is multi-talented. Not only is he classically trained as a singer, he is also a graduate of the Fashion Institute of Technology and has worked as a designer. He is a world traveler, he's multilingual, and he also knows a tremendous deal about food and has eaten at some of the most significant restaurants in the world. He's also a terrific cook.
I'm looking forward to talking to him because, like my love for food started at a very young age. It's always interesting to talk to people that didn't grow up here in America, what their opinions are of just American cuisine as a whole. So I'm really looking forward to the idea of talking about food and also talking about the communal aspects of cooking and sharing food as well.
It'll be a delicious experience.
It will be.
Thank you, Kyle, so much for joining us. We're so excited about having you discussing food and the origins of your relationship with food. And can you just start by discussing where that came from in your life, how you became so involved with food, the quality, the service, the enjoyment, the pleasure of food?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and to listen to my 3 cents. Well, this subject, it's one of my favorite by far. And of course, I would say my love for food is definitely coming from my maternal culture. I'm Taiwanese, but basically I'm Chinese because both my parents were originally from China. And growing up, I grew up in a big family. You always 8 of us, 5 kids, my parents, and also my uncle. He was never married, and he basically is our nanny because my parents, they were always very busy working. 5 kids, what are we gonna do? So our uncle became our nanny to bring us up. And he's also an amazing cook. And my father actually was a chef on the boat. So meal is always the important time for all of us. I remember especially like during holidays, we have so many dishes on the table. We have to stack them up. Like it's not about a quantity for to say, it was more of the diversity of the dishes. So I grew up in environments always tasting different things, and I just eat everything. It connects to the memory with my upbringing. So it's a lot of memorable moments come with it. And luckily, I have a palate for everything. So I always like to try different things. It's old Chinese saying, oh, I thought it was so funny. They said the Chinese people eat anything with 4 legs except table. Well, which is not true. That some people say, oh my God, do you eat dog or do you eat cats? No, not like that. But literally just we very much enjoy try different things.
So the personal memories of food are part of your love for it and your enjoyment of it. In your observations here in America, do we appreciate food as much? What is your observations of our relationships with food here in the United States from what you've seen?
Right. Well, that's a very interesting subject because to me, food has a lot to do with the culture, individual culture. And I think these days getting better. There are more diversity there, but especially when I first, let's say, arrived here nearly 20 years ago, I immigrated here. I remember I went to a supermarket and look at all the produce at the supermarket. I said to myself, who's gonna eat this? I found a lot of processed items, a lot of boxed food. I said, they don't look fresh. They don't look appetizing to me. They don't look enticing. Why would people eating them? That's the food chain. That's how they supply. I guess at some level people get used to it, so they don't really have many choices, so to say. But I feel these days, I think people are overall are more health conscious. Also became more of a so-called global village. So the resources are more readily available for everyone. So if one interested in buying different type of produce, it's possible to find them. Options out there, yes.
So you think socioeconomically there is a means to eating healthy, to eating well, that you just have to be educated, and
that's part of it. That's part of it.
Okay.
I think also, again, we talk about culture. The United States overall, let's say, it's a young country if you really look into the history. So it's unlike Asia or Europe, they have long history and also long history with the cuisine. And they're more into fresh produce. They're more into this morning I go to local market to buy fresh produce, what I prepare for today's meal, like even dinner, right? So it's more of the idea of eating fresh and seasonal ingredients. But now for us, we live in the big city of New York. Yes, we have a lot of resource, things coming in from all over the world. But often, let's say, sometimes the fruits, they want to be able to stay on the shelf for a long time. So sometimes they got picked off the tree way too early. So often we see that like fruits or vegetables, they're probably not even ripe enough. But that's another aspect of it. Yes.
You mentioned processed foods. I know you spent quite a bit of time in Europe. What is the excuse when you hear people say, well, I just don't have time to prepare, I have to rely on processed foods, working several out, all these hours. From your observations, living in Asia, living in Europe, is there an excuse we have for not preparing fresh food when you're dealing with a time restraint?
Well, first of all, I think United States, it's a huge country. The land is really big. And then also individuals' idea of what to eat. So I guess in Europe, also in Asia, a lot of things are seasonal ingredients are readily available. So people can just easily to buy them and enjoy them. And in this country, because the land it's massive, so often the produce has to travel as well. Also, the idea of the dishes they will be eating, if you think about it, what American food is known for, it's really not that many options there. So also those items tend to be able to be preserved longer, not the fermented part, not for it's a total different animal.
Do you think the pandemic led to more of the home cook?
Well, definitely, because I guess people have no choice. Someone even like myself, I enjoy eat out so much. But I remember during that period last year, I cooked meal every day, 20 weeks in a row. That would never happen in the past. And it stopped overnight ever since June. I remember June 1st, the first day the restaurant opened outdoor. My partner and I, we were already out eating. Yes, but it's been fun.
Eating out with you and Ron at some of the best places you've introduced me to, and I thank you for that experience because, I with a limited palate may not have experienced that had it not been for you and for your partner Ron. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's always our pleasure.
Thank you. And I want to talk about specific restaurants, but I know Ken is ready to speak about produce and markets. And
I know, Kyle, the main thing that I grew up in the South, and so I remember the community aspect of cooking. It was like my mom would cook, I'd be right underneath her shoulder, or twin sister would cook, especially for big holidays. So that's how I learned about the community aspect of what it was like to be in the kitchen. So first I want to ask, at what age did you start realizing you had this connection with food?
Oh, if you ask me, I would say it has always been like that. I can't even pick and choose a point of it because I just always eating a big variety of food.
Mm.
Yeah, I still vividly remember my father, because my father loved seafood so much, that he will buy some sort of clams, and we ate it raw. That only tells you how fresh they are. And then he will mix his own secret sauce.
Mm.
And I remember questioning him, Dad, are you sure it's edible? And it was super delicious. Yes. So I can't really pinpoint since when. I just always enjoy food.
Because I know from generations to generations of like recipes that friends will ask me, like I'll cook something for them. They're like, well, could you give me the recipe for that? It's like, I've never had a recipe for that. It's
right, you just learn how to cook.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where the idea of food has always been more than just something to shove down my throat to give me nourishment. It's always been something about an emotional connection to what I'm cooking. So the thing that always gets interesting when it comes to talking to other people that cook is basically like, if you had that one moment when you were young, there was like, oh, I know I can do this. And I know for me, it was my mom was cooking, it was Thanksgiving, and she was cooking the turkey.
Right.
And I was watching her cooking the turkey in amazement. I was probably 8 years old.
Wow.
At the time. And that pretty much started my journey. But also when it comes to that, when it comes to the elements of community, it's also about dealing with culture as well.
Absolutely.
Like for me, it's like, if I go to what they call a Southern barbecue restaurant and I have it and people are like, oh, isn't this the best? It's like, where did you grow up? Because this is not good at all. It's way too salty, it's way too this. So it's one of those things where when it comes to just where your palate leads you, so to speak.
Right.
How do you find yourself thinking about flavors and things that pop into your head when it comes to those things that you really crave?
Wow. I definitely, I'm fortunate to try a lot of different cuisine and dishes. Well, definitely something unusual combination always wakes me up. Oh, I'm also amazed. Basically, okay, it's part of my observation too that basically from the past decades, like let's say through traveling in France, let's say, well, I think it's arguably it's one of the connoisseur, right, for cuisine, and they are doing. There's a new name. They call it a bistronomie, right? Instead of a gastronomy. Like basically, it was gastronomy versus bistronomy, right? So one could go enjoy food in a very relaxed setting, but enjoy the refined food. Doesn't have to dress up to eat. And often they call fusion. Basically, it's basically that, mix of a lot of different things. Yeah, mostly when we say fusion, we automatically think about Asian influence, but literally it just means it's a mix across culture. So when that happened, that I'm very happy because I think something very familiar to me. In the meantime, I experienced something new. So whether it's they added Asian spice, Middle Eastern spice, or Asian herbs, just like cross-cultural ingredients, I found that it almost gave a new life to the dish, even if the most classic dish.
When I grew up, my best friend from high school, his mother was Japanese. My best friend from college, father was Chinese and mother was Japanese. So I remember cooking with Mr. Yi all the time. I never thought that I would be mixing a lot of Chinese traditional cooking techniques with the stuff that I learned before. But after spending hours with him in the kitchen, I could not help it. I find myself going to grocery stores going like, that would go well with that. And people are like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I'm just like, I don't know, it's in my head. And it's just developing that. I wouldn't say that my palate is sophisticated, but I would say that my palate is definitely unique for what it is. So with that being said, I would like to talk more about the ideas and concepts behind traditional Chinese cooking.
Okay.
Specifically about the misconceptions that Americans have about traditional Chinese cooking, because it always amazes me when somebody has a dish and then goes to an actual real traditional Chinese restaurant and go, why is this different? So I'm just saying it's because it's kind of like, I guess to say traditional Chinese cuisine it's just Chinese cuisine. Most people have added stuff to it to go like this. Is. But within the spirit of growing up with that palette, what have you noticed about what people perceive it to be versus what it really is?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because I still remember there's one of our used to be favorite Chinese restaurant in West Village. It was Chinese, but not closed. On their menu, there is traditional Chinese dishes and American Chinese dishes. I loved it because they saw it pretty clearly. They know this is what Americans would like. They think this is Chinese food. Then they have a column of traditional Chinese dishes. Now, first dish of the American Chinese dish, everybody knows, was chicken broccoli. Okay. Well, nothing wrong with that because Chinese people eat chicken, Chinese people eat broccoli. They both exist. But they don't always cook it that way. Right. And on top of that, they know that, well, the bottom line is a business. They need to survive, right? So they need to cook for American people on this land. So they need to make the chicken and the broccoli with a sauce. So usually it's saucy, right? And salty. Right. So that is one of the typical American Chinese dish. And then now you have General Tso's chicken as well. Okay, why? It's fried. Okay, that's also another very signature dish for being American Chinese dish. Now, traditional Chinese dishes is really complicated because we know China is another big country, and each province has their specialty. Some prefer sweetness, some prefer spiciness, some even spicier, like some prefer seafood. There are all sorts. So it's really hard to say that is any like standard Chinese food. I would say there are a lot of dishes these days we're eating originally was served to the emperor, it coming from the palace. Normal people, you couldn't afford to eat them. But today it became everybody's dish. Okay. And also there are a lot of street food, so to say. So because the big part of it is in the warm climate. When in warm climates, what do? You fry a lot of things because to preserve. And it's just safer, so the people eat it won't get sick easily. So that's also part of the cuisine. And then you have a lot of peasant food. I think like basic home cooking, so to say. So I think many culture has similar like this geographic, demographic type of different dishes, like Italy as well, France as well, like many countries in the world, they all have similar things. But that's a very interesting subject, and I'm sure we can talk about that for 3 days.
Oh yeah, like I was in Italy one time, and watching these guys that are, grew up in Georgia, ordering a pizza, and going when they got, what is this? It's like, what we eat is pizza. It's not pizza. Just know what it is not what you think it is. You're not going to go to Italy. You're not going to be in Sicily, order pizza and get Domino's. It's just not going to happen.
I would love to ask you, Kyle, please, how would you advise or guide somebody who is not an adventurous eater, who may have a more limited palate, who would like to try a more diverse cuisine, wants to be more open, but doesn't know where to start?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. I would say, wow, I have two thoughts immediately. One is basic stick to classics, all the classic dishes. And these days, because everything's out there on the internet, it's not that difficult to find out. Well, you got to compare notes because a lot of fake news out there as well. Compare notes and to start with the classic dishes. It should be just simple thing. And just little by little, see how you like it. But my second thought was absolutely the opposite. It's funny enough because last night, Ron and I, we went to a French restaurant in Greenpoint. So far, they're probably like the furthest point that
Yeah.
we decided to explore. And it was a tiny place. It was a lovely place. And it's one of their so to say chain from Paris. There were 3 locations in Paris, and they're basically all wine bar. So I was so excited. I got a table for 2 of us, and I quickly noticed that they only do tasting for 5 course. It's very casual, and I said to myself, my partner, I'm sorry, I need to throw him under the bus. Ron does not have the most adventurous palate. So I immediately write back to them and say, oh, I really, I'm so happy I'm coming in, but my partner doesn't eat raw fish. He doesn't eat this, doesn't eat that. They say, don't worry, we will accommodate. And sure, they did. And it's still lovely. Okay, everything was so on point. It was such a journey, so to say. And I ate what I ate, and Ron enjoyed all his 5 courses as well. We had an amazing time. So that is another way if the restaurant accommodate you, by all means, go for it.
I just learned something from you. You could always ask questions. You can call the restaurant ahead of time. You can ask. You can see if there's an accommodation. The worst thing they could say is no.
Exactly. You never know. And, to your liking. And there's also some people definitely has the allergy issue could be really serious. So you're definitely going to put that out there as well.
What about people who read about this very fancy restaurant, but they feel like, oh, I don't belong there, or I don't know if I'll fit in. I hear that sometimes from people who would like to try this restaurant, but feel like, oh, I don't know if it's meant for me. What would you say to that person?
Well, I know that's it's also it could be a very serious issue for some people. I would say even including myself, sometimes I might like certain restaurants' food, and I might not enjoy the crowd. I will put it that way. But then I would say to myself, you know what? I'm there to enjoy my food. I'm not there for them. So it's a very psychological things as well. So I try to use that in a way to educate myself. You know what? Just forget about them. I'm there for the amazing food, the amazing wine, possibly amazing service. So I will focus on what I would like to focus on.
How important is service when you dine out?
Honestly, it's very, very important. Not those like on your knees bow, bent over type of service, but being personal, perhaps, I don't know. I think that all added to the experience. When it comes to their personal, it's not about being fancy. It's not about being, at least for us. For example, we go to the Odeon a lot. Part of it because it's right by us. And currently the menu, I wouldn't say it's like fine dining. It's not. It's good, but it's not fine dining. But the reason why we go there all the time is close by, but they all remember us. They all like friends. You know what I'm saying? And we ask each other question, how your day going? And it became a second nature. You feel comfortable. It's became our local joint. So I will add up as part of service as well. It's not just like you sit down, eat, you pay and go. It's not like that for us. Right.
Do you see restaurants returning post-pandemic? What is the future of the restaurant industry? What do you see from your observations? is there a lifeline for restaurants now in this COVID environment?
Yeah, I mean, I would say luckily in New York is doing great. It's really doing great just compared to a year ago. And with all the added terraces
Yeah.
and a lot of them being extremely creative, I would say some of them perhaps doing way more business than they could chew on.
Oh, okay. Right.
But right, because imagine they're not going to change, they're not expanding their kitchen, right? But
Right.
now, not only, okay, in the beginning, they serve outdoors only, right? Then they add a partial indoor. Then they get a full capacity. So now they basically, depends on how your restaurant located. Some of them has double, even triple,
Wow.
but still the same kitchen running it. So I would say, yes, feel bad for them that last year it wasn't a great year for them. But right now, popular places are definitely beyond their previous capacity level. They're doing great, right? But not obviously not for everyone. Some of them do not have that much outdoor space. So it depends on individual as well.
Are the restaurants in New York maintaining their outdoor space now? Are they going to keep
Yes.
that? Oh, good. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Originally said till the end of last year, is that what it is? Oh, the end of this year, but they're gonna extend right now,
Good. Good.
as far as I know.
In your opinion, what makes a fabulous restaurant? I mean, I know you mentioned that personal service, that connection, but
Right.
what are if you had a list, what are
Thank
the
you.
factors that determine your definition of that's a fabulous restaurant?
For me,
Mhm.
the best, the freshest ingredients are the most important thing. And I really appreciate this quote by Daniel Hung, who is the chef and the owner of Madison Square,
Oh.
11 Madison Park, right?
Okay.
He made absolutely fine dining, 3 Michelin star. But he said, once he said it, I thought it was extremely important. He said, when the ingredients are so good, so fresh, the cook should take a back seat. I cannot agree more. So when your ingredients are so good, you just don't overdo it. When you overdo things, it's almost like not being confident. It's easily to add more to make it saltier, saucier, more stuff on it. Then when someone served the freshest ingredients, very simple, straightforward, and that's enough. So to me, a place where they serve in-season ingredients, straightforward, with some creativity in it, some surprises, and with the personal service, that will be a home run for me. Doesn't have to be too fancy.
That's so great. That's so great. I'm curious. Do you think that snacking is an issue in America, and that's why maybe the focus is off meals? Because can you tell me, in Asia, is snacking a thing? In Europe, from your observations, is snacking a thing, or is that mostly here?
I would say, yes, I do feel snacking is a big problem for many people on this land. But I also feel that a lot of Asian people, they do snack a lot because they have a lot of like casual, quick bites type of thing. They just nonstop eating. It's like, I'm sure we all have those. We all have those friends, Asian friends, that they could eat a whole whatever the whole highway, but they're still like so skinny, like a chopstick. It's again, that's another subject. It's like their metabolism. European, I don't find European snack that much. It's personal observation. Right.
I haven't either.
Right.
So I always wondered if that's what takes us away from our meals and our meal time and that meal experience. Ken, what are your thoughts about that?
I think for me, it's just people seem to be busy a lot, but not about stuff that's important. So it kind of takes them away from eating the right things. I mean, there's so many people that will come home from work. The first thing they want to do is like, put something in the microwave and watch TV to get away from work.
Right.
And that's where a lot of, people that I know that's what they do. They swing by a fast food restaurant or try and grab something that they consider healthy that's packed with salt and sit in front of the TV and eat it all day. And I think it's one of those things because of the way that everything's going with electronic devices and everything, that people have forgotten that kind of community nature of just eating as a whole. Even if you're cooking for yourself, there's a process of just being able to be present with what you're cooking.
Right.
And allow the things that happen in the day to go away. I can't tell you how many times people go like, I'm going to go to Trader Joe's and buy this. And then they'll get home and eat it. And then the next day it's like, why do I feel bad? It's like, did you check the sodium content? Did you check this? It's just, there's a lot of things with just the process, which brings me to my question about food delivery. Because I think at the point in time when everything was shut down, people were panicking and they were learning how to really spend time in the kitchen out of necessity. But right now, I've seen so many people just go to the convenience of delivery all the time, which I feel the same thing, it takes away that communal process. I know that food delivery was necessary to keep a lot of these restaurants alive, and thank goodness we had for that. But in America, so to speak, I think we're way too dependent on food that feeds that instant gratification rather than food that feeds the soul.
Right.
So I would just, your opinions on that kind of concept of, let's just say, fast food to feed, heavy carbs to feed that emotional need.
Absolutely. Well, we all have those moments. Okay. Okay. First of all, again, I feel it really all goes back to culture. It has so much to do with culture. When it comes to delivery, I have to say, personally, I'm not a big fan of order in.
Oh.
Really not. If I'm gonna order in, I'd rather just cook. Oh. Because when you order in, for me, I can only speak, for myself, not others. For me, when you order in, the temperature never right.
No.
So I will either go out to sit down for them to serve and then the perfect temperature and dish in front of me and enjoy it, or I cook my own meal. So I don't trust this delivering thing, but I know it's very big. Again, it's all being convenient.
Right.
And I've been communicating with my family in Taiwan as well. The delivering thing became a thing, either in the office, at home, because they follow the trend. That's part of their being them. They follow the trend very much. Now, for example, I hate to drop name, but Uber Eats was so big there. So everyone said Uber Eats here, Uber Eats there. Even my family, I said, okay. When my sister, she's tired not cooking, they will Uber Eats from a big hotel, let's say. They like in Asia, they like to have, because usually in hotel they have good restaurants.
Right.
So previously they are not allowed dine in. So they just started doing dishes sending out. So everybody just ordered in. So, we're eating these great dishes from this hotel, from that hotel. So it became a trend, quite frankly.
I have to ask you, I know you have traveled all over the world.
Yeah.
Could you share with us either the cities where you've had some of the best meals? If you feel like mentioning a restaurant, please feel free. But if you feel more comfortable just mentioning the cities, I would love to know your best meals. I mean, of course, home. I know home is probably number one. I get that, but
not necessarily.
I'm so curious.
Well, it's a tough question. It's a tough question, but you definitely call out my how to call that, a wanting of travel again, because our last, we try to be good though. We try to be careful. Our last trip actually was February 2020. Wow. We went to Peru, and after that, we pretty much like stay put. We said to ourselves, we already stayed this long, stay a bit longer, see how it goes, because the whole thing is not really settled yet. Okay, we are not the one who always planned where to eat before we travel. I know some people do, and certain places there's no way. If you don't do that, you can never get in. The only few places we make reservation if we really want to try their cooking, we do that. Most of them we will ask the accommodation where we stayed at, where the local goes, or what's the hottest thing right now, and what's the must try. So we pretty much try to explore those local places, or the highlight from word of mouth, the feedback from their guests recommended. So that's how we usually do it. Okay. So I'm sorry, I really can't give you a specific name where we go. Yeah. Especially these days, they change so fast. Right. The development is so fast as well. So there's some newcomers outdo others.
Of course. I'm just thinking because people say, oh, Spain, traditionally, right. That's it, or Paris, but right. There's more to the story. You're saying it doesn't have to be what's expected. It doesn't have to be.
We're lucky there's so many options out there.
There's and people, oh, Rome, that's it. No, what about this city, this province, this area? It doesn't have to be what everyone assumes.
Right. Well, you're funny that you mentioned Rome, but that's another case that we did not plan ahead. And I remember that's when I had a food poisoning, in Rome. Well, because it's such a touristy city. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know where you're going, and you travel, you want to see things, you travel all day. So sometimes you just want to pick something nearby, right? So I remember we picked this place, looked so local, okay? And it looks like a grandma's house, okay? With all the family photo, all black and white on the wall, okay? Really rustic. It's gonna be good. We had a dinner. I'm telling you, there's no one Italian server in that restaurant. I think it's probably been sold to some other culture people long ago. So you never know.
It's so funny, if I can share. When I was younger and I worked abroad a little more, and I especially more in the Balkans and Eastern Europe, I would say in my 20s and early 30s, I remember eating street food, wonderful street food in Cluj, Romania, in Eastern Europe. I remember in Bosnia eating all the time, just whatever. I went to people's homes and in Republic of Georgia. It was delicious food, never got sick. In 2019, in the spring of 2019, I went to Athens. I went to Greece with a friend, and we went all over. And we were in Athens. We're in an elevator, and there were some British tourists and Australian tourists, and they said, "You've got to try this restaurant." So we looked it up. It was a very well-reviewed, fancy schmancy starred restaurant in Athens, where celebrities went, whatever. And I said, "Okay, let's try it." Kyle, and you know this, Ken. I not only got food poisoning, I got a bacterial infection in which I couldn't eat solid food for about a month afterward.
Oh my God.
When I came back, luckily we had eaten at the restaurant the day before we were traveling back to the States. And so when I got back, I was like, oh, went to the hospital, was reported to the health department because they said, we've never seen anything like that before.
Well, you're lucky you survived.
I almost didn't. I mean, I was never this skinny in my life. And I was so sick. I said, I will never be like this again. I don't want it. I couldn't eat solid food for a month. Yeah. And this was from a good restaurant. And I thought all those years I ate street food.
Oh, okay. You never know.
Places I never had an issue.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. Ken,
well, it's part of fun. So we can talk about it now.
Now I can laugh, but I couldn't laugh about it for a long time.
Yeah.
That points out because where I live in right now in Koreatown in Los Angeles. They have the Koreatown Festival. And for me, it's like as much cuisine as I've eaten just globally, Korean food has never been something that I've gravitated towards. But now that I'm living here, it's a little bit
exposed to it.
Right. But it's also I love about the festival is because I can try a bunch of stuff that I probably wouldn't want to buy a huge amount of.
Right.
Just to see what I like. Which brings me to my next question, Kyle. What would be the most unique thing that you've eaten that you didn't think was going to be appetizing?
Okay, came to me right away. Alpaca meat. Now, obviously, that was last February during our trip to Machu Picchu. And that was the very first time I tried alpaca. I tried and I like it. Now, the local explained it to us because, well, you're coming from this side of the world, you guys stayed at this type of hotels. Of course, they send the most tender alpaca to these restaurants. So you're having the best part. Of course, they are tender. They're really good. To me, they just taste like venison. Okay. But the local, they will eat those like, older, drier. It's part of how they live as well. They as we were told that they will like air dry them, save them over the winter. So when they want to eat it, cook it. Okay. But anyhow, alpaca is the one I tried and I liked. And I'm gonna give you like the same point, but the opposite point. Something I tried it and I absolutely don't like it. Also in Peru, which is the guinea pig. You guys know what it is?
Yeah.
When the car drive by down the street, they say, "Oh, look at that! That's guinea pig. They're air drying on the rack. It looks pretty big." And in my mind, I kept thinking that it's like a mini pig. I think it's a pig. So one time my partner ordered. I said, "I'd like to try it," and I was like, why so chewy?" Then I realized that it's a rat.
Yeah.
That I did not enjoy at all. But they told us it's local delicacy. You normally, if the whole family can eat it, you share one. Only on your birthday, you get a whole thing for yourself. That was quite an experience as well. How about you guys? Have you tried anything that?
What's the best way to put this? My mom is from Waycross, Georgia, which is basically where the Georgia-Florida borderline happens. And she lived close to the Okefenokee Swamp.
Right.
So when I was younger, I ate a lot of stuff that if I told people what I'd eaten, they'd be like, what the hell? Like she had squirrel jerky, which I didn't think was going to be good.
I've heard of that in the South.
But squirrel was definitely something that I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I mean, if I had a choice, I would not eat it. But at the time, it was like, okay, this is not as bad as what I thought. And again, it's a rodent, but it'd been smoked and then dried out and everything. So it's jerky. So you really can't go wrong with jerky, But then at the same time, it's like, I think about the stuff that I've cooked that I was scared to cook that I ended up jumping into, like gator. Gator, I was terrified to cook. And it's one of the things I love cooking when I have the money to cook it. But I'll cook it for me. Because if you tell people like, what is that? They go gator. Oh my God, agate. Wait. I'm like, no,
is it similar? It's just gator. Is there like crocodile? Are they the same?
I've never had crocodile. I'm not sure if I know they probably do have crocodile steaks and stuff, but it's mainly like gator tail.
Okay.
And they have this. I think it should still be here at the farmers market in Los Angeles, where you can get gator tail po' boys. And then a friend of mine from Mississippi that would ship in gator tail and crawfish. And we'd split the cost. So I would like take some home and cook it as well. But once I learned how to make gator tender, I loved cooking it. But again, it's expensive. So you can't cook it a lot. And I've had some horrible stuff as well that nothing as bad as the experience that Yasmine had, but I've eaten some stuff where when I was in Europe, when I was staying at people's houses, where you have to be polite. and you bite into something and you go, it's nice and tender on the outside, but the inside is kind of raw. It's just some chicken dishes and stuff, and I didn't speak the language, and I'm eating it there. And, you know, it's not like you can run out and get something else because, you know, you're out in the... So, yeah, I mean, I didn't get sick, but I think that's why I drank a lot to kind of kill.
It's the one way to do it. So it's more of the preparation different. In this case, it wasn't something, it wasn't like an exotic animal.
It's one of those things that once you have it, you get sick from it, in the back of your head, it takes a while to get that out of your mind. I mean, you have to think about swallowing to see if that's a good idea. Yeah.
I have to ask you, a bread basket, when the bread comes, don't bother because it will take away from your meal. What are your thoughts about that? No carb? What are we doing?
Depends on the restaurants. There's some restaurant, the bread is so amazing.
Right.
And some, these days, they make amazing homemade bread. They charge you too. You gotta order as well. I guess depends on individual how you balance it. And it's really good. I'll eat them actually.
You would?
Yeah, I would. Especially good bread.
Moderation. So I'm listening to you, and dessert sometimes. Dessert is also
sometimes. So even though Ron and I we jokingly say we only drink our sugar, so we always go liquid dessert.
Okay.
You know us.
All right. But moderation is key. I mean, I think to
I guess yes.
Moderation. I appreciated what you were saying before about word of mouth from the local, you know, from where you stay, or just hearing about where to dine. But is there a resource? Do you read restaurant reviews? Do you read the Times for the reviews? Do you not care? Is there something online? Is it the Food Network? Do you subscribe to anyone's opinion, or is it just, again, your own perception and word of mouth? Where do you go?
Well, these days, normally we will look at the Eater New York, of course.
Eater New York. Okay.
See what they write about it. And honestly, actually, Ron sent me more article than I do research because I'm a terrible reader. So, or for magazine, New York magazine, sometimes random magazines they write up. And if I read it, I feel it was interesting, or New York Times as well. Peter Wells is, you know, like he's like one of the most famous food critic. I'll read it, but we tend to try it ourselves and see if we like it or not. We don't really follow the review that much because everyone has different taste. How would you decide that other people don't like it? I may not dislike it, right? It depends. Especially, I mean, these days, they also rely on social media so much. So we actually found there are many places they have such success on through social media. So the customers will come, right? Whether after a while, if they could sustain themselves or not, that's another story. Because not everyone's try to be there because of the food. Some people try to be there because it's trendy. So they want to be there. But they go, oh, I've been there, that's it. So they're really not there for the food, but they want to be there. You know, it became like a scene.
Well, speaking of that, dress codes, I know there was one restaurant, I don't know if they still have that you need a jacket rule. I'm not going to mention the name, but are restaurants still using dress codes, or is that gone? Should you feel? I think
majority are gone. That leads another trend I was going to talk about is everything just much more casual these days. Even from gastronomy to bistronomy, that's all became very casual, and many even consider more fancy restaurants, they all also they drop the dress code. The most I've seen is business casual or smart casual. Then leave it to you, individual, right? How you want to experience your meal, right? Once my friend said I kind of like her comments, you say, "Oh, it's nice to eat like an adult, like you dress up to enjoy a meal." That's added a whole experience.
Okay.
But if individually there's no dress code and you want to dress whatever way you want, I don't think they will kick you out either.
Okay. And you see that you've seen that in Europe as well, in France, that it's becoming a little more casual.
Yes.
Okay.
But I have to say, in Europe, I think there's still a part of it. They very much appreciate the old world.
Mm-hmm.
So they are more strict about that part. They like to keep that as part of their culture and their manner, that they still more tend to dress up to go to certain places, that really high-end places. They still do. But overall, the trend's really getting casual, including the food, right? Right now, in the city, New York City, okay, River Cafe, they still require jacket.
Oh.
Okay, and perhaps 11 Medicine Park, for example, they do require jacket, I think. And then most of them, they don't drop their dress code. No one like to, okay, people go to ball game, used to wear 3-piece suits, and women wear corset. These days, people wear tank top to go to.
So to fly, you would dress. I mean, flying initially, people would dress up to go on an airplane back in the day, and now people,
Exactly. It's definitely, they all influence each other in the cuisine, even in fashion. It's everything street. Music as well. Everything is all very casual these days.
Oh.
That's where some went really wrong.
Have there been a lot of vegan restaurants popping up in New York recently?
Yes.
Because I know there's been a couple of chains here, as well as people that are advertising a vegan meal where they don't have a vegan kitchen. And just because it says vegan, it doesn't necessarily have to be vegan. When Burger King started selling the Impossible Burger, and then somebody tried to sue them because they said that, you can't have two different grills if you're cooking on the same grill. It goes, we never said it was vegan. We said the Impossible Burger, the meat, vegan, but we never said that this was a vegan burger.
Right.
Do you feel that this move towards veganism is more of a health conscious choice or more of a trend that is kind of here for the moment?
I feel the original thoughts on this whole vegan trend it's for health conscious reason. However, again, many business depends on how they package themselves. Okay, we're not dropping names here, right? There's one restaurant here was very popular. I think in the city alone they have at least 3 locations, and I was laughing because they're so successful you cannot get in. And I said to myself, why suddenly more than 50% of young people became vegan? Suddenly. So they all have to be there. You look at the crowd waiting in line to get into the restaurant. They're all the same demographic. Okay. So that, to your point, that's also part of the trend. Now, I think that trend is much bigger than most people think. Because, for example, Kim mentioned in EMP, 11 Medicine Park, the 3 Michelin star, and the restaurant was rated like twice as #1 restaurants in the world. Right now, the menu was completely vegetarian. They didn't say vegan, but there's no meat. There's no even fish and chicken. All vegetables, which actually is extremely exciting because it's very hard to me personally. I feel it's really hard to do. But again, there are all sorts of vegetables. I mean, if you think about it, vegetables, the variety of it is actually way greater than meat. Meat have chicken, fish, beef, lamb, goat, even whatever. They're all just pork. It just that. It's all about seasoning. But vegetables, the leafy vegetables, like the root vegetables, there are countless vegetables. And I think the movements go in 2 different directions.
That's what I see that as well. I see. You mentioned 11 Madison Park. If you don't want to mention a name, that's fine. But are there chefs that you follow that you really admire?
There are a few personally. I would say I found a very interesting aspect happening right now in the city. It's also Italian restaurants. Okay, there are many. Some people say, like, oh, I can go to Italian restaurant every night, but I cannot eat Indian every night, for example, because I think for most people, Italian food seems to be more broader, like easier for appeal to a wider audience.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, there are a few Italian restaurants in the city right now, and their chef are actually Spanish. And I personally, I like it very much. Because in general, Italian food are pretty straightforward, very simple. But in this case, I feel the chef put on an interesting spin on it, on those fresh ingredients. And I found it even, to me, way more exciting.
So Kyle, for people that are afraid to cook, what would be your best advice to get them to try?
Wow. It's interesting. That's a very interesting question. Well, like I always said, some people say I can't cook.
Right.
Okay. So I said, no. If you know what you like, everybody could cook. You cook to your liking. Yeah. You taste it, and you'll be surprised that anyone can cook. We're not comparing like a professional chef, right? But we just prepare simple food, and like I don't consider myself a good cook, but my partner's still alive, so that answers a lot. And I keep things simple, very simple. And I just cook simple food, and I find that at times I'm really happy that I can put something very simple together just for myself. And I'm very happy. So I would say if you can taste it, and you could even cook for yourself, and that's a good start already.
I want to say to Kyle, I want to thank you because
you're welcome.
Well, no, not just for this, but because of you and Ron, your partner, you have both introduced me to food and to a wider palette and to adventure with food and to try things without fear, and to introduce me to some of the best dining experiences I've ever had have been with you and with Ron and our dear friend Sheila, who's passed. I remember we've had wonderful times together, and I want to say thank you to you both for that.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's it's part of life, and it's communal.
It's communal. Yes.
And we share time together, and it's always like the old saying, it's always good to break bread together.
Absolutely. And I look forward to when we can do that again soon, I hope.
Absolutely. Always available.
All right.
We're gonna eat every day, right?
Yeah. Until next time.
Just sorry.